Hello everybody, this is John Felt. Welcome to the Ag Weather Outlook for November 19th, 2016. Well, over the last week we went through this Arctic oscillation transition that went from positive to negative. And keep in mind, because I'll be talking about the AO a lot this winter, that when we go through a transition from positive to negative or negative to positive, we often get active weather. And that's what we had this week with a fairly significant blizzard over parts of the upper Midwest. Now, you might say, is that early? Well, I think it is a bit early, but we are getting into, from a climatological perspective, this ramp down in temperature, and that is going to play more and more of a role. So as we get between Thanksgiving and Christmas, we do get more active winter weather from a climatological standpoint over parts of the upper Midwest and Great Lakes. And then as we get into the period from Christmas to New Year's, we get more active winter weather over the middle part of the Midwest. So that is what we're going to be seeing, I think, more and more, and that's normal for this time of year. But I do think this system that occurred over the upper Midwest probably was a bit early for pre-Thanksgiving. But right now you can see where that system is. It's pushing off to the east. That's ushering in much colder air behind it. Snow from the Great Lakes over into the northeast U.S. still with that system. Over the last 7 days, other than that upper Midwest from parts of Nebraska, South Dakota, and especially Minnesota, smaller parts of Wisconsin, and then pushing across parts of the Midwest. Overall, it was a fairly quiet week. There wasn't a whole lot of precipitation over most areas. Now, again, this came in the form of snow. That was the most active. This was very light precipitation for the most part, a couple of pockets of more moderate. Overall, nothing all that significant. And you can see in this past 7 day percent of normal where there's no shading here, that's zero precipitation, and this is all below normal. So really this is the only area over the last week that experienced above normal precipitation. Now over the southeast U.S. and south central U.S., you can see in this 30-day percent of normal how dry it's been. We are looking at, look at that, -5 and even at a few spots -8 inches over the last 30-day departure from normal. That is really amazing, and that's why that drought is expanding and also intensifying. You might remember it wasn't that long ago. It was mainly Alabama and northern Georgia, and look how it's starting to spread off to the west here due to those rainfall anomalies over the last 30 days. Now, if we look at the upper Midwest, other than a few little pockets here and there, it's been dry as well. So despite the blizzard over the upper Midwest, for the most part, we've been in a dry type pattern. Now here's where the snow fell, and it is moving off to the east, so this isn't the entire picture. It's going to be moving across Wisconsin, parts of Michigan, surrounding areas. We're going to have some lake effect snow due to the water still being open, the warmer water. That's going to enhance snowfall, but you can see where the heaviest snowfall, that's that darker shade of blue across Minnesota. Now, temperatures last week don't really reflect the cold air pushing in because ahead of it, it was quite mild. So most of the week until that cold front passed was mild, and then now we have the colder air that's pushed in. Now the jet stream this week, look at this. We have this ridge of high pressure over the middle part of the nation, and what that's going to do is say that we're going to have some moderation in temperature fairly quick behind this cold air over the central part of the U.S. Now, here is that trough of low pressure, and that's going to still be associated with that cold air. So we average that out for the week here. You can see the eastern third of the nation below normal temperatures, but then that warmer temperatures, the rebounding temperatures over the western U.S., and that's going to be pushing into the central U.S. Generally towards the end of this 5-day period. Now we are going to have another system that pushes through this week. I wanted to give you a little idea on timing. This is late Tuesday, and you can see there is that chance of more snow over the upper Midwest. Now, something that all meteorologists have things that they focus on, and you probably know by now if you listen to a lot of my briefings or my posts, I focus a lot on soil moisture, but I also focus, especially in the winter and the summer months, on feedback. and I'll be talking about that. I'm sure I'll put a post on that out later this year. But when we get a good snowpack, lows tend to move along the southern edge. Now, you could look at this and you could say this would be, if this was later in the year, a good example of this low is moving along the southern edge of that snowpack. I do not think this is an example of that feedback. However, it's maybe more of a coincidence that it's doing this, but that would be something that I would be looking at if this was maybe late December or especially January and February. And that's when we get heavy snow cover because these lows move along the edge of that snowpack. But anyway, this is the middle part of the week. We will have another system. Looks similar to this last one, other than not as intense, not as much cold air behind it, but there will be some reinforcing cool air, and there will be a chance of snow, a good chance over the upper Midwest, and some modest rainfall elsewhere. And if we look at the precipitation values, this right now looks like the heaviest snow, so we will be getting a repeated snow over some areas of the upper Midwest, and then we will have some modest precipitation again over the middle part of the nation. I don't have a whole lot of listeners, I don't believe, along the far west coast, but we are having onshore flow, and it looks like very heavy precipitation over the west coast. Now here's your precipitation over the next 7 days, and this is mainly with this current system moving off to the east, and you can sort of see the models are indicating some enhancement of lake effect snow here and there, and then moving off to the northeast, and then there will be a second round that'll be coming into that the latter part of this week. Okay, looking a little bit further ahead, 6 to 10 days. Well, that ridge of high pressure is not all that strong. That's that green dashed line, but it has pushed into right in the middle part of the nation. So some of that warmer air, milder air, I'm not going to call it warm anymore as we get into late November, but some of that milder air is going to be eating away at the cold air, and you can see the 6 to 10 day average temperatures do show a moderation. So I guess the point here is this cold air that's going to be settling over the area over the weekend is not necessarily going to last. We're going to see a moderation fairly quickly in most areas. Now we get into the period after Thanksgiving, the 11 to 15 day range, and this is where it looks like it starts to get sort of interesting here. You can see we get a real large dip in the jet stream over the western U.S., and that's going to bring some cold air into the western part of the U.S., and still some ridging. This is that ridging right here over the east. So we're going to sort of reverse what we're seeing here with the instead of warm air in the west, some cold air in the west. And we're going to have to see what that does. That's way out there, but I think that's something worth watching to see what that's doing. I think that's somewhat unusual that we're seeing that type of pattern. And the question is whether that cold air will work into the central and eastern part of the U.S. Right now, this is the 11 to 15 day temperature average. Okay, so back to the Arctic Oscillation here. I wanted to show you the black line is the observed. So in this box here, this is that transition. See, we went from this positive now to this negative, and this is saying, at least for a while, it's staying in the negative range. And that's saying we're having some amplification of the jet stream, and it's saying that the eastern U.S. is prone to some of that cooler air or colder air staying around. So I will be looking at the Arctic Oscillation. Sometimes it is a real good indicator of the general large-scale trends. Other times not as much because there are other things going on. Okay, so precipitation here, what we have is we have most areas below normal, and I want to again sort of show you the south, central, and southeast U.S., a very strong dry signal. Now week 2 shows some more action here. I think overall, whereas it seems like for a long time, weeks and months, I was having a high confidence. I think we're getting into a situation here where our confidence as we get into the winter months, the overall confidence is always going to be not as high as it is during the more quiet times of the year. But this is showing on week 2 during the 8 to 14 day range, enhancement of precipitation over the middle part of the nation. I think this is going to be in the form of rain. I don't see enough cold air right now that this would be in the form of snow. And then here's weeks 3 or 4. Again, I'm not looking at a real high confidence here, but this is for temperature. It is saying that this is that cold air with that trough digging in the west, and then still some milder air in this region. It's not necessarily a typical pattern, but it does sort of support what I showed you with that dip in the jet stream over the west, and then a modest bulging of the jet stream over the east. And here's your precipitation anomalies. Now there are some risks or hazards this week. I wanted to point them out. You can see the heavy precipitation on the 22nd and 23rd, mainly in the form of snow over the upper Midwest, and then much below normal temperatures over the southeast U.S. behind that cold front. The other thing I want to look at from time to time here is sort of the really big picture for temperature anomalies. And one of the things here that I wanted to show you here is that when we get cold air up in this source region here, it's just a matter of time before it sinks to the south. And right now, this is unusually warm temperatures. This is cold and this is unusually warm. This is really, really warm temperatures. And this is the current time, and then this is December 5th. So it's eroded a little bit, but overall we still have a lot of unusually warm temperatures in source regions for the middle part of the nation and the eastern U.S. And as long as that warm air is there, it's going to be a little bit difficult to get much persistent cold air down or pure Arctic air down. Now, that I say it's a little complicated because we're getting this western U.S. trough, which is sort of pulling it in. But I wanted to say that if we really look at these cold, sustained outbreaks of cold air, initial signs would show that cold air pooling in these source regions. Not only do I not see that pooling, I see unusually warm air in that at this time. And that's something I'm going to be tracking in the briefings and in my posts as we go through the winter months. So anyway, your takeaway, the alert, more snow later as that second front comes through for the upper Midwest. Overall fluctuating temperatures starting out very cold, then moderating and continue dry for the southeast U.S. and generally below normal precipitation for most of the nation over the next couple weeks. Now, I hope you all have a great Thanksgiving. Be safe if you're traveling. If you have any travel questions, if you're going from one spot to another and you have some concern about travel weather, send me an email. I'd be glad to answer that, john@bluewateroutlook.com. Matter of fact, I consider you all my friends. If you ever have a big event, a wedding, or something that you're concerned about the weather, you know my email. I'd be glad to help you out with that. Have a great Thanksgiving. Take care.